Welcome to State of the World with me, Sally Lockwood, in Dubai.
And me, Tara Palmeri, in New York.
Good to see you, T. How are you?
I'm great. I am dreaming of Europe, actually, right now. I'm heading there in a few days to my native land of Sicily, so I'm excited.
Oh my God.
To get some...
Are you going to the White Lotus Hotel?
Oh, yeah, I wish.
You should go for it. You should go for a drink. That's where Jeff Bezos is having his honeymoon.
Oh, is he? He's there? Oh, great. I had no idea.
Okay.
And now you've just ruined it for me. I did stay there, though, actually, once, because I was with Trump for one of the G7s, the first G7.
Well, at that hotel that's now famous?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
In Taormina. It was amazing. So yeah. We only got one night. Like when you stay with the president, you get to stay in fancy places, and then you go on to the rest of your life and know what it's like to have La Dolce Vita.
Whistle-stop tour. Yeah. Well, I mean, so we're not going to have you next week, are we? You're going to be in Sicily. I might get you to dial in from Sicily. If not,
I know. You're going to need to send
we'll
me
manage
a
without you. You need a break. They have Wi-Fi in Sicily, by the way, Tara.
I'm going to be on a really remote island, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. Really
anyway,
remote.
let's get to it. So on a much more serious note, T, we're going to be talking Gaza today because it does feel like politically, at least, they're inching closer to some sort of a breakthrough on a ceasefire deal. Certainly that's what Donald Trump's been saying on Truth Social this week. What are you hearing?
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of Truth Social diplomacy. Hamas has not agreed to this ceasefire deal that President Trump has presented. So I think we take all of this with a grain of salt.
Certainly at the time of recording, they haven't agreed to it yet.
Exactly. Yeah, and Trump, has the appetite to get involved in the war in the Middle East because he sees himself as being successful with the strike on Iran. And he also is, dying for the Nobel Peace Prize. But he does think that this is a space that he can have a win at least and be seen as, peacemaker. He's in his legacy mode. Now he's close to getting his signature piece of legislation, possibly the only bill that will be passed basically in the entire Congress, the big, beautiful bill. If that passes this week, which it looks like it probably will, then he'll be freed up to sort of work on these deals that are written in history books, really.
I mean, a lot of you will remember that obviously it was only, just over a week ago that Donald Trump essentially helped broker that ceasefire between Israel and Iran. God, it feels a lot longer than that. So much is happening at the moment. It feels like months ago. Anyway, he really lost his temper. I was going to say lost his shit. I don't tend to swear on this episode, on these podcasts anyway. He really
I
was
think he
furious,
used the F word, so I give you permission to say shit, okay, Sal?
He lost his shit. It's okay for me to say that.
An American president dropped the F-bomb, okay?
Yeah. So he did, right, because the ceasefire didn't come into force as he'd organised on time. Both sides were accusing each other of violating it. And he dropped the F-bomb, absolutely furious, clearly, with Israel and Iran. And then the ceasefire came into force very quickly after that. I thought that was really interesting. I would love to have been a fly on the wall for that phone call between Netanyahu and Trump. But potentially, has he got an appetite for these deals now? It feels like he's got a bit of momentum. And something that I thought was quite interesting is that he said he's going to be firm with the Israeli Prime Minister when he meets him on Monday at the White House, when it comes to the situation in Gaza. It sounds like he was firm with him over the Iran situation. I mean, who knows? That's what it sounded like. I mean, are things changing in his relationship with Netanyahu? What does Trump's version of firm look like?
I think he's frustrated with Netanyahu. He felt like he was backed into a corner to get involved in Iran. It was a risky political decision for him, for his base. The MAGA base is America first, isolationism. He had to take a hard pivot away from the thing that he talked about getting involved in, as he would say on the campaign trail, pointless wars in the Middle East. And here he is making a strike, unaware of how Iran would react. He was lucky this time that they gave him a heads up that they were just going to send, a few missiles over to Qatar and that they would be able to stop it. But it was really, they were rolling the dice. And they were not only rolling the dice with lives in the Middle East, but also with his political future. And even though he's not running for office, he basically went against his entire movement. You could tell that he was feeling very sensitive about it because his sort of, as I like to call them, henchmen online were attacking anyone and everyone who questioned him for getting involved. So I think Netanyahu is probably not high up on his sweet list right now. You could say he was not happy with how that went down. He'd be much happier if there wasn't a war going on, I could tell you that.
Yeah, well, look, let's see how this meeting goes on Monday. Let's not forget there's still, I think, 50 hostages in Gaza. More than half of them are said to be dead. Hundreds of Palestinians are dying each week. It's been a really awful week in terms of what's been going on the ground. It really doesn't feel like anything has been achieved in Gaza in months. And certainly some sort of ceasefire can't come soon enough, because even though things might be sounding a little better politically and diplomatically, the situation on the ground, Tara, is horrendous. I've done an interview this week with the spokesperson for UNWRA, that's the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees. His name's Jonathan Fowler. Take a listen to what he said to me. As part of the UN family who focus on aid and humanitarian needs, is there any suggestion at this stage that you will be able to increase the amount of aid you're able to get in if there is a new ceasefire?
It remains incredibly unclear on that front, and that in itself is a problem. I mean, we're always standing ready to spring into action as soon as we can. I mean, that's what we do, in humanitarian work, and we do that around the globe.
For people who aren't as familiar with the aid situation in Gaza as you and me, there was an 11-week blockade after the ceasefire ended. Essentially, no aid got into Gaza. And then just over a month ago, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation was established, which is this controversial new way of delivering aid to Palestinians in Gaza, and it's backed by the US and Israel. Just explain to me what impact this new aid mechanism has had on Palestinian civilians in terms of how they're able to get access to food and feed their families.
It's incredibly negative. Of course, some people would argue, well, some aid is better than no aid. And, that is a point of view. But the point is that this is, it's a sort of death trap, Hunger Games situation. I mean, for a number of reasons. For example, the way the UN system works is to go to where people are that need aid. So people might have to walk a little bit to come to UN distribution points. But the point is that the UN was operating when we were able to operate fully, there were about 400 aid distribution points, and around 100 of those were specifically UNRWA ones. But the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation has about 4, 5, something like that. And the fact that, the sort of securitization, the involvement in this aid operation of a party to a conflict, that's what goes against international humanitarian law. So it's not functioning in the interests of the population. People are going to these aid distribution points, and they are losing their lives, But not only that, the kind of aid that's been allowed to be brought in is not what's required overall. I mean, we need to be able to bring in bedding, fuel, sort of plastic sheeting, shelter materials, those kind of things, medical equipment. We have a number of remaining clinics that we, as the largest humanitarian agency from the UN, operate on the ground in the Gaza Strip. We're about 50% out of our medicine supplies, for example, stock out, and that's just getting worse day by day. So, this is... it's not even a sticking plaster, on the problem in the Gaza Strip. Our Commissioner General, the head of UNWRA, Philippe Lazzarini, has described this as a distraction from the ongoing atrocities in the Gaza Strip. And in fact, subsequently, he has joined calls to say that this scheme has to stop because it is not working, and at the same time, it's distracting attention from what needs to be done.
As you say, hundreds of people have reportedly been killed trying to reach these aid distribution sites. 2 US contractors who are part of the security detail protecting these sites have spoken to the Associated Press. You've probably seen the report, to say that they've shot at Palestinian civilians trying to get aid. Israeli soldiers have also said something similar to Haaretz newspaper, that they've been ordered to disperse Palestinians crowding, trying to reach aid even when they present no threat and they're unarmed. Hundreds of people have lost their lives with this new rollout of aid. For those who choose not to go to one of these distribution sites because they're too fearful or it's too unsafe, what are their options for getting food if they don't go to one of these sites?
Little or nothing. It's as simple as that. I mean, the F word in this basically is famine. And it's often too late when a formal classification of famine comes in. We hear stories like if somebody has a tiny handful of flour, people are grinding it up with dirt to make some kind of, slightly bigger bread, doing what they can find, eating, grass and things like that. Or, people are maybe trying to sort of grow a few little vegetables or herbs or something, whatever they can do. But yet people do have nothing.
Are we at that point yet? Even if it hasn't officially been labelled it, is Gaza in a state of famine?
What's happening on the ground looks like it, feels like it, whether or not it's formally classified in the technical sense as one. That sadly is often done after the event. And so really the real story here is to stop what is happening here and now from happening.
Absolutely. Stop wrangling over terminology and just look at the images. They tell you what you need to know. Jonathan, is any UN aid getting in at the moment?
There is some. I mean, there have been some agencies, World Health Organization's been able to get stuff in, some medical supplies, this kind of thing. It's extremely limited. Of course, when nothing gets in and then you suddenly hear that 6 trucks have been able to get in, that is something to be glad about. But we've come to the point where we're celebrating the entry of 6 trucks. And that's what we've been pushed to. I mean, like the rest of the United Nations system, we've appealed from the very beginning for this war to stop. And I mean, it was shown the last time there was a ceasefire what the international humanitarian aid family, including the UN, was able to do to actually scale up aid and bring it in. And that really has to be our first priority, is to save lives. The guns need to fall silent. They need to fall silent long term. But in the short term, the priority is going to be getting aid to people that need it.
So that was Jonathan Fowler, a really big deal at the UN. And, he works at the Agency for Palestinian Refugees, but they're based in Amman in Jordan now because they are no longer allowed to operate in Israel. So that's where he was speaking to me from. And, he said it's just not clear, whether they're going to be able to do anything more if there is a ceasefire. They've not been told whether they'll be able to get more aid in. And certainly it is just so needed, Tara. It's hard to believe that this war's been going on for 20 months, that people have been suffering like this for so long.
Yeah, it is incredibly inhumane, and it needs to stop. And it's really heartbreaking to hear that people have been reduced to this. And
let's see if we.
I'm so glad that you stay on this story every week, though. So thanks, Sal, for doing that.
Well, thanks for keeping your ear to the ground in Washington. I know you're on holiday next week, but if there is some sort of a breakthrough on this when Netanyahu's at the White House, we might have to just dial you in from a beach in Sicily.
I never turn my phone off, Sal. But if you like this show, please subscribe, comment, share this with all of your friends. Sal will be back next week, and I'll be with her the following week.
And she might be with me next week. Let's see. Thanks, guys. See you soon.
Bye.